IAS 10, International Accounting Standard 10, events after the reporting period. Events after the reporting period, what does it mean? So these are the events which could be favorable events, that is, the company may be gaining from these events, or unfavorable event, the company may be losing money out of these events, occurring between the end of the reporting period. If 31st March December is the end of the reporting period, the date when financial statements are authorized for issue. If the financial statements are approved on 20th of February, for example. That means, let me take an example. The financial year is from 1st January to 31st March of a year. So the year ends at 31st December. So all the transactions of the company have been done. So the books of accounts are ready, but there will be some closing works remaining in the books of accounts. So that will be over by 31st January of the next year. Then the board of directors, the management, have to authorize the issue of the financial statements, the annual reports of the company, the books of accounts of the company. So it happens on 15th February of the next year. And that is not sufficient. The shareholders also need to approve the financial statements. So let us say that happens on 28th February of the next year. So in this period of 2 months, there will be some events taking place in which the company may be losing some amount or the company may be gaining some amounts. So for these amounts, the adjusting entries have to be entered. So we are going to study those which have to be adjusted and which need not be adjusted. That we are going to study in this IAS 10. This is the meaning of the events after the reporting period, events that occur between the financial statements period end. In our example, it was 31st December, and the date the accounts are approved by the board of directors and authorized for issue. That is, in our example, it was 28th February of the next year. So there are two types of events after the reporting period. Those are adjusting events and non-adjusting events. For adjusting events, we have to pass the entries. For non-adjusting events, we need not pass any entry. We just have to mention it in a note. For adjusting events, these are the examples. Settlement of a court case confirming that the company had a liability at the period end. So during the year, we did not know that we will win the case in the court or we will lose the case in the court. So it was on the balance sheet in the liability side as a current contingent liability. So after the reporting period, so that is in our example between December and February. So it turned out that we lost the case and we have to pay the compensation. So it became a liability. Bankruptcy of a customer. So customer means he is a debtor to us. So we have to collect money from him. So bankruptcy means inability to pay the debts. So customer will not be able to pay us back. So it will become a bad debt. So it will have to be entered on the debit side of the profit and loss account. Sale of inventories after the period end. So when we are recording the inventories, we are recording at a certain value, let us say 10 lakhs. So if the inventory is sold at 11 lakhs, then we will get a profit of 1 lakh. That will be entered on the credit side of the profit and loss account, 1 lakh. So, and if we sell at rupees 9 lakhs, then we will have a loss of 1 lakh. That will be entered on the debit side of the profit and loss account. Discovery of errors and frauds. If while recording the books of accounts, if the accountant have to, they have done any mistake or error, then that has to be adjusted. So if they have entered more on the credit side, a debit entry has to be passed, and if they have entered more on the debit side, a credit entry has to be passed. Confirmation of profit sharing bonuses payable, that is to the employees. So just like a salary or wages, it has to be entered on the debit side of the profit and loss account. So for these adjusting events, the company should amend the figures in the financial statement, that is in the profit and loss account and in the balance sheet. They have to correct the figures. And next is an example for adjusting event. Next, material non-adjusting events. So for these events, entries need not be passed. A note is sufficient. So examples for this: purchase of another company by our company, or we may sell a subsidiary of our own company. That could be a non-adjusting event. Discontinuing an operation. For example, we have factories A, B, C, D. We are selling factory D. Then it will be a discontinuation of an operation. Issue of shares and debentures of our company. Destruction of one of the units of our factory, let us say by fire. Then also it will be a non-adjusting event. So in the non-adjusting event, you will not pass an entry, but you have to mention the type of the event. So why did that event took place? So about that event you have to mention, and its financial effect. If it is a loss-making event, what will be the amount of loss? That you have to estimate. An approximate figure you have to give. And the next one is an example for non-adjusting event. And two special cases of events after the reporting date. First one, going concern. So accounts will be prepared on the basis of going concern concept, but after the reporting period, the management may decide to liquidate, that to sell the company, to stop the working of the company. Then the concept of going concern will not have any relevance. So we should avoid this going concern concept when the company is going to be sold. For example, if assets are depreciated, it is on the going concern concept, because we need the assets next year also. Next year also we are going to depreciate. 2 years later also we are going to use the assets and then depreciate. But when the asset is but the company is going to stop working, we do not need any assets, so we are going to sell the assets also. So we have to value the assets and record the market value of the asset. So this would be an adjusting event. And interim dividend. So interim dividend is paid in between the year. If from January to December is the year, in June or July interim dividend is going to be paid, so there are no problems. But in case of final dividends, if they are recorded in this year's books of accounts, an adjusting entry has to be passed and it should be recorded in the next year's books of accounts.